just want to be really brief in introducing what we're doing and how we're doing this, outlining some of these private sector touch points, with the idea not to give you the full detail of how we're operating, but more to sow the seeds a little bit of where that private sector skill set is coming in, to get you then thinking into essentially the main half hour or so of the workshop. And then we'll just come back into the main plenary and hear from you what you have worked on and what you've come up with. So essentially a very simple three-step structure of the workshop. Next slide, please. So how do we do it in the Zurich Flood Resilience Alliance? Next slide. So what we have created is a multi-sectoral partnership where we work together with the humanitarian sector and civil society organizations, with research, and Zurich and the Zurich Foundation representing the private sector, essentially working in adaptation and more specifically in flood resilience. We have created a very specific definition of what resilience means for us, so we can take this into our operational work on the ground. We're currently working with over 400 communities in 25 program countries, using our own resilience measurement framework that we have developed based on this very definition of what resilience means for us. And resilience means for us really the nexus between risk management and development. So it's not just another term for vulnerability or overcoming vulnerability, but really making sure that we manage existing risk while being able to achieve what we want to achieve in the future. So this development angle coming into this as well. And we've done the development of this tool actually using Zurich in-house expertise, how we serve our customers with measurement of risk. So we essentially translated our current methodology that we have used, brought in the resilience definition, and have used that to really create a tool that is now in use throughout our operations. Next slide, please. Now, how do we operate and how do we make sure this is not just another program where the private sector acts as the donor? This is funded through the Zurich Foundation, but I'm still sitting in the business and trying to build that bridge exactly with the skill set that an insurer in this particular case brings, which essentially is the capability to understand and manage risk. So all the 10 organizations that are in this together are really equals in terms of their rights and their duties. So we share the collective responsibility of achieving our program's ambitions. And we do this by co-creation. So using this setup where you see we have a joint management structure essentially. So we built our own organization that spans across 10 organizations. We have our own leadership, we have our own work stream set up, we have our own delivery mechanism, and we have a shared single measurement framework that helps us say whether we are on track achieving our objectives or not. So we have co-created all of this together based on a joint visionary statement and based on a joint theory of change that we have developed. Now, we're doing this in a long-term cycle. We've been operating since 2013 in 2 5-year cycles. So we're now in the middle kind of the second 5-year cycle. And we're currently looking also at how we can now already plan for a further expansion, leveraging our ambitious targets into a third phase, maybe 2025 plus. So that is question marks. Don't quote me as a given yet, but obviously we're paving the road to get there. And in this setup overall, I would say, averaging this out over the past 10 years, Zurich has brought in 3 full-time equivalent positions in the overall staffing of this graph there. Next slide, please. So we've heard that the core skill set of the insurance industry is necessary to drive the adaptation piece. But there's also a limit to what we can insure if the risk keeps increasing. So I think as an industry in this space, we have a very genuine interest in reducing risk and building resilience to keep our business model viable. So the first input for all of the attendees here in the room is, irrespective of what industry you're coming from, think about your core skill set and your core business model and how climate change might undermine this business model, and what genuine interest you have and what skill set you can bring to drive that into adaptation programming, similar but not exactly the same as ours. So I've talked about the solutions that we've brought to this, our resilience measurement framework. We're also looking at what still happens in events and how they turn into disasters. It's our post-event review capabilities framework, which essentially brings in our claims expertise, our analysis to understand losses. So another core skill set that we try to bring. And with this, we have really created a network where I, as Zurich, am really trying to represent the alliance in addition to the business, and where we are really a network that share the common interest. And I think in terms of looking at the adaptation space, in terms of what's happening here at UNFCCC, I think with the private sector, you can also get a new type of an advocate for the new type of challenges that we have ahead. Next slide, please. So it's not easy to do this. I think otherwise more people would do it. So there are opportunities, but also challenges. And I think there's no way of talking these away. So I start with the challenges. At first glance, this is not necessarily fully aligned with the business opportunities, right? I am not selling insurance. So my salespeople would ask me, so where's the underlying revenue that you bring, right? So I think you need to build up a narrative that helps you explain why this is helpful. And for us, the timeline is really the challenge, right? We still work on annual kind of insurance transaction models. So, maybe the third bullet there is the most important one that I have to, my managers, be patient. I can't give you year on year, easy results. It takes 5 years to really build community resilience. It's something that's hard to make it meaningful, and that's really important that we understand the longer term time series. And what we also want to make sure is it's not just volunteering where I say, I need some hours from my company employee base. No, I have a specific skill set that I look for, that I want. And obviously it's very nice to talk about this, so my comms people love it, and my marketing people obviously love it, and we have very good stories. I mean, that's very clear. But I think we need to understand what's beyond the comms and marketing case to really make a meaningful contribution. And that's also something I urge you to think about. It's not just good marketing, hey, here's photos from what we've achieved jointly, but what is the differentiating element that you have brought in? And that's the opportunities. I think as Zurich, we've had tremendous echo in not just being a donor, but enabling a different type of partnership that we've done, engaging more deeply, and then also reaping the benefits back into the business, who can really understand better. So where are actually the challenges also with insurance? How can I start changing my insurance model? So there are some thoughts in terms of opportunities and challenges, and that's then the core part for the workshop. So hopefully I have sowed the seeds a little bit in terms of what we're trying to achieve. If not, Stewart is here to rescue it all, so he'll showcase the second example of how you're working. Over to you.
That's a good and terrible setup. Hi everyone, Stewart Sarkozy-Banoczy. You can go to the next slide. And I'm the Global Director for Policy and Investments at Resilient Cities Network. And what I'm going to talk about is a very specific program, again, in partnership with the Zurich Foundation and Zurich Corporate, specifically Zurich North America right now, but potentially going elsewhere. And it's called Resilience for Communities program, the R4C program. And I should say that it doesn't matter if it's corporate or private sector or what it is, partnering is hard. And you have to be very diligent about it. And when you're diligent and when you make sure that you have objectives and that you're aligned as organizations, that partnership grows. So we have other partnerships as an organization. Resilient Cities Network works all over the globe. We have chief resilience officers sitting in cities in 5 different regions, and we have a multiplicity of partnerships in those regions and sometimes globally. And sometimes those partnerships, going back to the challenges, stick at the first 3 bullets really badly, and it takes a long time. What has been amazing with Resilient Cities Network and Zurich is that because of the model itself that started with the Alliance and the way that resilience was viewed, we had almost an immediate sort of synchronicity with the work that was going on, and that helped. So it's a little bit of a I was very encouraged by it because I've been through other partnerships and I'm in some right now with some corporations, and it is the harder, it's the right-hand side most of the time, because it takes time to really get to where you understand each other and even using some of the same definitions. Next slide. When we view resilience, it is similar in the definition that Michael showed. It is not just about surviving. It is not just even about adapting, it's about thriving. So we say surviving, adapting, and thriving, but we emphasize the thriving part. And we always emphasize the combination of shocks and stresses, because there's a lot of shock conversations, and technically the shock conversations have a lot on the insurance side. And so we tend to bring in a very holistic, equitable view of resilience, and our definition is such. So as we began this program, there's really 5 different components to it. It's actually a bit more than that, but condensed in. Michael mentioned the tool, and that tool is now being used and it's being adapted and adopted as a multi-hazard tool. So the flood part of it becomes climate and multi-hazard, heat, flood, equity. So that's one part of it. There's a tool, the tool involved, and it's testing and reuse. Then it's community input and training, and that's really important to us. We bring people in at the local level as we work in our cities, and it isn't just a city, it's probably a community and neighborhood that we're doing this in as we're testing it. That leads to testing in those distinct communities. And this is our staff, their staff, other people's staff, the city staff, all in one, working together. That then will eventually, because we're at the sort of 2-3 stage, that will eventually lead to project identification. And when I say projects, I mean actual projects in the ground in those cities that also need partnership. And one of the interesting things that Zurich Foundation did right away as we began this program is they were the first to add $500,000 to the Resilient Community Impact Funds for the R4C pillar. And as we add others to that, that allows us to get to project identification and actually do the implementation on them in the cities that we're working in. So our 2 lead cities are Boston and Houston in the US, and then there's 3 champion cities, Charleston, New Orleans, and Chicago. And we're also, at this point, there's potential that this could go global. So it's a very, as Michael said, very integrated teams from all the parties working together, especially Resilient Cities Network and Zurich North America. Next slide. So part of what we had to figure out in that translation part and getting to work together, and I think this is really any one of the sectors that are in the room, any one of the organizations or corporations that are in the room, how do we engage with each other? And so we were really trying to take that new tool or renewed tool and change tool and really engage holistically, meaning we were looking at multi-hazards and we were changing the view that we were working with at the community level. Because some of these community members that we were training in Houston, they've been flooded again and again and again and have heat issues. And they're in borderline communities that have been isolated due to past racial legacies. So we want to really engage holistically. The other thing is that we're on this recovery treadmill and it's constant. Storm after storm, shock after shock. And so part of this is also to, as we build resilience and we use those different elements that I described, are we doing pre-recovery? Are we doing something that's building the resilience rather than in a recovery standpoint all the time? I mentioned it, but the city and the communities are partners in this with us and with Zurich. We are avoiding, because we have lots of strategies in our cities now with lots of projects that are waiting for funding all over the world. And I'm constantly showing them and pitching them through our various programs. So there's no end of projects. Therefore, we are focusing on staying away from the strategies and really getting down to the level of the projects that can be funded. And also, because the Resilient Community Impact Funds, you can go to the next slide, is set up in such a way that our funds should be coming in with other funds. This is the model. And I think as you think about ways to work together, we're actually working together with Zurich and Zurich Foundation like 3 or 4 different ways to overcome the way the challenges are stopping the cities from doing their work, or the for-profits or nonprofits. So the model itself is meant to push towards impact, because we bring money from the RCI funds and we bring money from the matching funds, and the projects come through the program. And this is sort of the way the model has been developed in most of our programs. One of my babies from the early days is the Urban Ocean program. We've got projects on plastics and circularity sitting in an opportunity booklet with project statements that need to work. We want to get there with this program. And the idea is that for the most vulnerable, we're working with these corporate partners to get us through this so that these 2 pieces can come together along with the city activity, the city budget. So we want to be able to do that in a kind of scaling innovation and aggregation way with the funds that come out of the program that we worked with the corporation. Next slide. So that's it. Hopefully that did what Michael needed to stimulate a little bit more. And on to the next piece.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Stewart. And the idea is now that we will break out in 3 groups. You see the numbers, 1, 2, 3. And I would encourage you to focus on, what we've just heard, and look at, what are some of the challenges that you think you might encounter in your business, in your industry, in your sector, wherever you're coming from, and the opportunities, and making sure that, we can put a narrative around these opportunities and overcome the challenges. If you already know of case examples that should be heard or learned about, please write them down, and we'll try to get them included in a write-up of this workshop. And I'd also encourage us to set up, as I said, a bit of an informal networking group where we can share these examples. And also, if you have specific recommendations, or here's the 1 sentence that I want to make sure is recorded, you can write that down as well. So, to break us up a little bit, and there's obviously a tendency that, people you already know sit close together. It's not, this table, this table, this table. But let's just go through a number. So, 1, 2, 3. 1. Cell phone? 1. No, 1. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 up front. 1, 2, 3. Please go to the corresponding flip charts. We have about 30 minutes. We'll go around the room. You can ask questions. Good work. Thank you.
That's what I'm interested in. انت عندك صوت؟
Humanitarian organization that's Oh, wow. Okay, great. So let's discuss on what works, what doesn't work, where do we go from here. If we can get as specific as possible, that would be great. Especially because we do want to move this forward. Maybe in new initiatives that could be launched at the World Climate Summit in UAE next year. So shall we first talk about we can. Are there any immediate inputs that you would like to raise, or shall we just first start with what would be the value from your perspective in such a private sector engagement in adaptation? I don't know. I don't know where this.
Okay.
Sure. So I'm saying we can, because we already have these technologies in place within the cities that are used for predominantly alert and warning, they can actually also be used for education to enable citizens to understand how to prepare rather than necessarily what to do in the event of an evacuation.
Comms and marketing and behavioural change.
Well, the actual system exists as part of the infrastructure. So if you think about the fact that all of the citizens that have opted in to this, which maybe in their many thousands, so we support 80% of US zip codes as an example. So we can deliver that type of approach, and equally in the UK alerting system, even though the Environmental Agency obviously sends out alerts, the actual cell broadcast public warning system that the government has installed, that we put in place recently, could be used for more than just an emergency. It could be used for education, and it's not today.
Okay.
Going back to Flood returning for a moment to the Flood case, I mean, you would need to have an educated population around risk, and you'd need to have flood hazard maps. I mean, indicating. I mean, in the UK, it was only after detailed flood pricing map emerged that actually it was recognised that you need some special measures for those people who are at greatest risk. So I mean, unless you've got a model of the flood risk, then you're not going to be able to set up a flood re.
So part of what we do is, flood re operates regardless of individual awareness.
It's like Google Maps. Oh, thank you, thanks. It's also gone out through the cities. I don't think it's on. Or is it like the conch shell, or is it like, I don't know. But yeah, it's also gone out through the cities. So it was a pilot study that we hope will be taken up by the city as ongoing business as usual. That's cool. Yeah, so FloodMap got funding from Rise Resilience Innovation, but they also facilitated the partnership in through the cities, who then facilitated the partnership in through Ways. So I guess that's kind of that multi.
But the Rise Resilience funding is like philanthropic funding,
Yes,
no, that's grant
correct.
funding.
No, it's philanthropic funding. So it looks for different climate adaptation companies, or they specialize probably in startups as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Who are, looking for that.
Just out of coincidence, I
Yeah.
happen to work for Rise as a contractor. Seriously. I mean, he may be checking.
We got them all.
One sec. He's already have
Yeah, exactly.
But the interesting thing about Rise is, it does work with these startups. Part of the issue is how do you get all these startups that develop these things
Yes.
into procurement for cities? That's what I've been talking to them on, is how do you get them right?
And that was going to be one of my questions to you. Yes. Okay.
And anyway, that was seeing how regulation could help. So anyway, I'm kind of giving those examples, but I still do come down to if there isn't the financial benefit or direct line of sight to profitability, how else can you motivate or incent companies? I don't think this is even working.
Also be a great question to discuss with Michael and how he did that within the broader Zurich company, right? Because it's not, the alliance is not making money.
Yeah.
It's just spending them. We are spending towards money.
Yeah, I was gonna say like non-monetary benefits, right?
But I think it can work again if you can create like insurance for the states, even if the private sectors are coming, so they have like insurance to insure them. So even after the problems are happening, then they will be insured on a lot of the problems. I think that if there is creation of insurance, there will be the insuring the companies, the private companies that will help at the time of the predicament or the problems that happen.
Yeah. In terms of this alliance, it's really from what I understand from the Zurich point of view, increasing resilience means that the claims will reduce. Yeah.
And
so investing in resilience
Investing is really
could also have a monetary value.
Yeah.
Then again, we do operate in a lot of countries where Zurich is not present.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting to hear from Michael, right? How does he sell internally that we are operating in South Sudan, for example?
Yeah.
So he did nothing in Nigeria, like this year? Does he have
We
any
are
partnership
not.
with Nigeria?
We are not. The alliance is not active in Nigeria.
Because the flooding of this year was really, really bad.
Yeah.
I don't know the UK education system in geography lessons, or how do you put that into
I think we all have a duty to communicate. But I mean, to make lessons for schools, I mean, I would hand over to someone else. Is there someone who writes lessons for schools around this table? Because, I mean, that's a very specialist form of education.
But you know what should be in there, right?
Yeah,
So I think
yeah.
we need to find a conduit how to transport that. I think that would be a great opportunity for RMS to engage.
Well, I don't know if RMS would do it, but I feel anybody who works in risk, like you and I do, we have a duty to communicate.
All right, more food for thought.
I'm the scribe. I can only do one thing at once.
You're doing such a good job of it.
So let me try.
Do we need to use it?
Yeah, that's on the live stream.
Oh, is that a live stream?
So a couple of thoughts. One is, we haven't really worked with the education sector. I work for Apt Associates, it's a global consulting firm. We implement projects for USAID and other donors. So I think part of the education is sometimes tried to be done through gaming. So it's it's more for communities rather than schools. But the idea is to have either apps or other sorts of games where communities can, they simulate whether they would buy, in this case, parametric insurance, and then something happens, and did you buy it or not? Would you get a payout or not? And I think that really, helps to understand how things work. But they take a long time, right? So by the time people get a sense of how this really works, it might be a few years. So I think there's an opportunity there to try to make this faster. But we're also working on the health sector, and there what we notice is that for patients who need some sort of treatment that is like long-term treatment, sometimes there's like a natural disaster or something happens, and then they're unable to continue with their treatment. So we've been having to work with health ministries and other sectors to be able to track those people even after they're displaced using mobile or other technologies. So I think the idea is that you need to be able to prepare for that, because obviously once the disaster hits, it's impossible to do it at that stage. But this type of skill, I think, might be able to be replicated for others, and it's something that hopefully it's just testing technologies that might then become market ready, and that's why there might be an interest to do this type of thing.
Yeah. Go back to the human behaviour. So all the research tells us people's don't think about risk the way insurance people think about risk. All our internal prejudices are different. What's the media? What happens most often? The flooding example is the first time you flood, it's an act of God. Second time you flood, you're unlucky. The third time you flood, I live at flood risk. So, but everything else, crossing the street. So, but what happens in the UK, for example, car insurance is compulsory by law. Home insurance is compulsory when you buy your home from your lender. Health insurance is done by the state.
Government and policy as well. I don't like. I'm like the loudest person at the table. Okay. But I think there needs to be an entree point particularly for startups. So why would a startup engage
integrating? I think we're integrating insurance processes within the community, for example. So insurance go and they work alongside, for example, the farmers to understand what are the causes of their potential yield loss.
Yeah, that could be.
And quantify it.
That could be a skills test program.
Educate the farmers.
Not only educated, but provided with information like your irrigation system is failing because you are not expanding it properly, or the tree that you're planting doesn't sequestrate CO2 or doesn't absorb water enough, and here's the data to prove it. We recommend you to do this.
Yeah, it's not quite the question yet.
No, but it's a program for them to educate and understand what are the issues within their process.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so I've got one. So I helped write the national and international standards for hydrogen and how you handle it safely, which is risk reduction, which enables that stuff to happen safely across the world. And I don't get paid for it. And maybe some of my team will contribute, and I'm paying for them, but still not getting paid for it. But
why are you doing it then?
Because
that's what we're trying to get at here.
It gives a global improvement, and it means we're collaborating with the right people, and it means we engage with the right people globally to be at the forefront of what we're doing.
So that's relationship building, it's credibility, you're learning too probably in the process.
Yeah, learning, sharing, and engaging, creating something bigger than we could do ourselves. So that's kind of ultimately philanthropic. Yeah.
So do you do other work, or do you have your people that you're trying to develop, your high potential?
So far I'm doing it, but I've identified a lady who can start to contribute too. So.
I think in a lot of places it's critical, that kind of approach is critical to keeping your social license to operate.
Yeah.
The better the community knows you and what you're doing,
And
the more likely you together can withstand.
And also
LTO, right?
breaking the stigma as well, because many people don't want to collaborate with insurance because of the stigma that they have. So if you have
I'm the insurance guy. I thought you were talking about stigma of academics.
That's a whole different thing. I agree. We're more or less on par.
You got
no, we are not.
One of the co-insurers in the U.S. does this.
Yeah.
They go they show up at every single community event. The fire station's doing something, they're there. There's a night out at the park, they're there.
With the money?
No, just to engage mainly with the community. they'll fund the barbecue at the
Yeah. Name
Typically, that's brand awareness.
name
Is
the
it rather than-
name the stadium.
Is this marketing PR?
Yeah, could be.
WA.
But nothing wrong with it.
Tell us
but-
about
yeah.
This has to be on a voluntary basis because, like, for example, I was thinking we provide a lot of response mechanisms. If you think about some of our software, it's a SAP for emergencies. So you structure the response to a crisis, and then you follow the steps. So firefighters do it, but we get paid for it.
We had a program, and I'm almost positive it was Japan, but don't quote me on that.
Japan.
Where we
Don't quote me on Japan.
yeah, where one of the local insurance companies would join with WWF once a year to do this mangrove planting. It was like
Yes.
a day out volunteer
There you go. That is
activity.
exactly what it is.
It was a day out volunteer
Yeah.
activity, and what the insurance company found was that they were actually paying out less
Of course.
for flooding.
That's what mangroves do.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the
Right.
places where they had done this volunteer activity for mangrove. I mean, we knew that as an environmental organization going in.
So you
It was
tricked
nice
them.
to sort of bring
You
it was,
tricked
it was,
them into saving lives.
what are you calling it? It was skills-based. It was a skills-based program.
Yeah, just to like push on that a little bit. So the idea of both examples was not to have the volunteer piece, but the volunteer piece often comes in
Yeah, but it's
at
not
a lower
volunteering.
level to kind
Yeah.
of like get it going.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because like while you don't want it to just be in kind or just you
Yeah.
don't want it to be
Cheap
just
something.
volunteer type functional.
So whenever government brings projects, they feel like it's something that when people come with project, they feel like it's like the government people are making money because there are a lot of corruption. You see a lot of project, but it's not going down to the grassroots. So for you to bring back the grassroots, you have to work together with their religious leaders and their local government leaders and their council leaders. So I explained on that. I said it's okay if you really want to have this project because the communities are disappointed in the government. The government are making a lot of money, their children are not in the country, and still they are getting more poorer. So any new project they see, it's like this are just looking to make money. So you even to educate them to understand that you need to plant a tree, and the tree is not for the government. You have to train the community and make them believe that I'm doing it for myself or I'm doing it for the next generation, where I'm protecting the land. So you have to have like a training or capacity building that those people have to believe that if I plant a tree, I plant it for my next grandchild. It's not for me, for example, because last decades, like let's say 50 to 30 decades, most of the economic trees in Nigeria were cut for firewood. And this is the effect now. So people will not notice, okay, these trees that you've been cutting, they are meant to preserve the soil and to protect all these things. So now you've cut all the trees, you use them for firewood, or maybe your grandparents, or maybe your parents, they caused this. So now for you to protect the next generation people, you have to plant another tree. Because nature, you don't play with nature. You have to bring it back to the normal way for us to get the better world.
It's just hard to remind now because you're talking about like funding. You should work with a lot of companies that need sort of offsets or ways where they are trying to like reduce their carbon footprint. Part of it is planting trees, and they need areas, so might as well work with them and receive money, and then that way it will go directly to the community. It won't go through the government because you mentioned corruption is like a very big issue, and the trust. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They see how it impacts them. Yeah.
We should help our Nigerian friends.
Yeah,
They've been,
yeah.
Experiencing quite bad
Floods.
Yeah.
Expand our Africa footprint. Not quite what we aim to do in this workshop, but point taken.
Yeah.
So you are looking into expanding into African countries with early warning, right? Are others kind of looking into or busy with creating similar initiatives or ideas on kind of expanding your social and environmental programming?
Next year we're going to be doing World Climate Summit in Cape Town, and resilience will be on the agenda there. Nature-based solutions. Yeah.
I thought it was in July next year.
Oh, sorry. Well, it's at COP28, yes, but we're also doing a separate thing in Africa. Sorry, that wasn't a self-promotion.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's also about, like sort of bridging players together, like you mentioned. So at least, for us, not expanding, but then getting sort of private sectors involved in these opportunities so that they know what's going on. And, we work with insurance companies a lot, so it's really also like voting in terms of which companies we choose to work with and what they're doing, right? Because I think maybe I seem far removed in like wealth management. We don't actually take on the risk of doing these, investments ourselves. But I think part of it is because you're a bridge between so many different players, the sore spots, where, things maybe fall apart, you're able to hopefully help facilitate the conversation so that way, a lot of these, I would say, like partners are able to understand ways of collaboration and then hopefully can invest in the right solutions, whether it's governments or clients, private companies or just insurance companies. There's a lot of capital there, right? And in a roundabout way, it comes back to you guys. If cities are more resilient, like the areas, it reduces premiums, and it's just, I think different ways of perspective, like what I was talking about before.
So the
right?
fund, I don't know if you work for a fund or looking at sustainability investing.
Yeah, or just, so we work as an independent, but I think that there's just a lot of opportunities, like even in North America, in terms of if you, let's say, connect charitable giving and how there's tax incentives for that. And so, we work with sort of wealth transfers and maybe incorporating some of these strategies into a family's estate planning needs. It sounds removed, but I feel like there's space for it, and
there's money there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would be great if you could develop that a little bit into a partnership model. So specifically now the wealth management.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to link this to something I said earlier on the panel, that adaptation is not a cost, but an investment.
Exactly.
So how could you, I don't know, team up with your customers or with your network to say, oh, maybe there's a piece of the wealth management that should go into adaptation. So if you could spin that thought further and maybe take that home and think about, hey, here's maybe an opportunity to partner up with somebody and drive the message, that would be great. So I think we need to slowly wrap it up. Barbara, if you want to, I don't know, take a minute to, okay, this is what I want to say. So exactly. So maybe wrap it up in 1 minute. If there's this last flash, of ingenuity, put it also on the flip chart.
Should we?
There's one other thing that we're working on. This insurance-backed resilience concept, which is a collaboration with insurance companies. So using our data around water levels hitting a certain trigger point, wind speed, so it's parametric insurance. Pre-arranged trigger points for capital that either capital needs to be dispersed or we have a group that can do evacuation recovery efforts. So that's kind of an interesting collaboration with technology, insurance to help. Because I think a lot of the problem starts we money for money when there's been a flood or disaster.
Any innovation? Generally, I think what comes back quite a bit is insurance and innovation.
Two eyes. You should just start with that. Honestly, yeah.
Insurance and innovation.
Yeah.
But also related to the fact that risks are taken.
Okay. I have bad news and I have good news. So if I can focus the attention back into the plenary, thank you so much for these engaged discussions. The bad news is the time is up. The good news is we have more time because this room is not used afterwards. So what I encourage us to do is now try to wrap it up, collect some of the thinking from the different tables to the full plenary. And then we open the doors, maybe get some coffee or so, but I understand we can still use this room. So by all means afterwards continue the various conversations that have started, or make the slow but strong groups work a little bit longer. So that's absolutely feasible. So thank you so much, and I'm also looking to Barbara, who has started to collect some thoughts and has had a few observations from the get-go. So if you want to take us through some of these impressions.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, I'm Barbara. I am an advocacy advisor at Mercy Corps. So I'm on the humanitarian NGO civil society side of the spectrum, but I am part of the alliance, the Zurich Flood Resilience Alliance, and we are a very happy member of the alliance. So I would like to share just a couple of observations from kind of a non-private sector perspective as a partner of the private sector. And I think there are a couple of things, and I will relate it to some of the things that we've noted down in this wonderful group here, that it is extremely important with an alliance like this, with all these various different partners, to have one common definition, understanding of the problem, mission statement, vision. And this is something that has been really, really clear, I imagine, from the start of the alliance, because of the diversity of the organizations that we have. And the diversity is the strength, but also a risk, right? So Michael will attest to this, because when I just joined the Alliance, I started using all kinds of definitions that were not approved, which was an issue. But the kind of common understanding of what we are talking about and how we're talking about it is very, very important. And this is also related to trust and to understanding of each other's incentives, interests, but also this common vision. The alliance only works because there is a trust between the different members, right? And there is a little bit of a natural, I would say, distrust among a lot of civil society, NGOs, humanitarian organizations towards the private sector, thinking, oh, they're just out to make profit. And this trust needs to be built within the alliance or within any partnership, that there are incentives that are not just monetary, and that there is a genuine desire to do good behind this common goal that we've all together established. So I think these 2 points are absolute prerequisite for the proper kind of working of an alliance or a partnership, or in this case the Zurich Flood Resilience Alliance. And then maybe finally something that I kind of observed in the alliance. I'm from a very humanitarian background, and we humanitarians are kind of agile. We see a crisis and we go there, and we're taking a lot of risks. And there is a very interesting kind of similarity in a lot of private sector actors. Maybe the risk taking, maybe not, it depends probably on the company. But kind of the idea that we need to think on our feet, and we need to innovate and be creative and think about solutions when problems arise. And therefore I think one of the strengths of, in particular, this partnership is that we are all very agile. As an alliance, we are very resilient, because we are all from organizations that need to think on their feet whenever there is an issue, whether it's a COVID pandemic or anything else. So yeah, I just wanted to give those perspectives on my experience within this alliance, and I'm very curious what you've all discussed in your groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Wonderful as ever. So we'll roam a little bit the three tables, and I'm looking for volunteers to give a few inputs of some of the key messages. I only have heard snippets, but some very promising snippets. So at this table, I've heard that we'll draw wealth management into the equation here and explain to people that wealth management also can be used for resilience building. So happy to explore this further. But who is a volunteer to share a few more remarks?
Okay, so we had an interesting discussion just to build on the wealth management area. I thought that was an interesting opportunity. You were explaining how credits and offsets, and so we discussed how this point about trust, but also common understanding, but also the incentives, the motivations being very important so that there can be that alignment, and you think broadly about how to bring others along with you. I work for a technology company, Everbridge, and we were talking about a collaboration that we're exploring. We do public alerting or early warning systems, and a collaboration with public financing where there's benefits mutually. We talked about the benefits. So by having, as funds would be deployed by the UN or the World Bank, having the benefit of the public alerting or early warning system as part of that. So there's something in it for everyone, for the society, at a societal benefit. The technology is being used to help the local communities, and as well there's kind of a collaboration with the public and private sectors. So that was an example that we discussed, and I'm sure I'm leaving some things out. Anyway, those were some of the topics. So, all right. Do you want to speak about Nigeria? Why don't you share some? Yeah.
Well, what I want to share here is like in my country, Nigeria, where I come from, this year we got a lot of flooding, and the flooding is we've never expected it. It came without expectation, and for example, some of the flooding they feel the source is from the other country, Cameroon, and the other one. So there is nobody is ready for the flooding. So for this kind of, we have to have innovative way of working with the communities for them to understand that at any moment anything can happen, because all this effect is the side effect of what happened maybe 50 years ago. Because Nigeria is a very beautiful country. Along all those places, we have a lot of beautiful economic trees, which a lot of people, the local people, cut it and just burn it for firewood. Some use it for furniture and a lot of things. So this is the impact, the side effect of the thing happening right now. So there's need for more capacity building to the community around the people. Look, this is flooding is reality, climate change is reality. You have to work together to plant new trees or new things to protect embankment for all this neighboring to the sea, to the rivers, so that this kind of issue cannot be happening continuously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Important reminders and innovation and finding a business model to support these communities. Thank you very much. I'm turning to this table. I've heard some interesting thoughts around risk communication and education, and I think we have a very critical mass here between risk modelers and communicators, early warning system, and those who see the aftermath of the population not behaving maybe always in the way they should because there is a lack of communication. So I'll chase you all down, you will hate me for it, to see if we can do some education programming and advancing those thoughts. But that was only a small part of the debate, I'm sure, here. So who wants to add on to that from that table?
I mean, I'll go. So I think just from our perspective, first of all, some great scribing and some very talented people sat around this table what really, where it starts, I think, is understanding risk and actually what risk really means. And certainly we're fortunate enough to have Robert on our table, who is an expert as such and has written books on this. So that was the first point. I think what the second point we were looking at, and I unfortunately our flip chart's up, so I haven't got to use that as an indicator. Just go from memory. But the second part. Oh, there you go. The second part that we talked about, maybe going from the bottom, is that there really is an opportunity, we think, linking risk to a common taxonomy for how you handle these risks. And I don't think that exists today as a provider of public warning systems and early warning systems. I can tell you, whoever you talk to, there's no defined role for government, local authority, the individual communities, and the individual themselves. And we talked about perhaps once you understood risk and you understood the kind of the what you had to kind of handle against that risk, you could build something there that would ultimately form education. I think that where we have some great examples, of course, with the Flood Re example that we were able to draw on. And then I was also just so you understand, Houston, Boston, they're all there. We run the alerting networks in those cities. They're not just for recovering from a disaster, which is what they're used for today. They should be used for education. They should be used to remind people that, hey, it's hurricane season again, and guess what? Is your generator fueled? Have you worked out your evacuation route? Have you done these other things? So I think that was really where we're coming to. But all of it really comes down to, I think, education, and this education framework of being able to have a standard that we can go to make sure that not only the citizen is educated, but also the groups up the supply chain have that same level of education. And we certainly have access to, particularly in the US and at country level and 24 other countries, the contacts that are responsible for the emergency management aspects of that. So I think that's generally it. Are there any? Yep, of course, absolutely.
One point. So I have one point to make, which is to ask you, which of you has played the game of Snakes and Ladders when you were a child? Oh, yeah. So hands up if you played Snakes and Ladders. Everybody plays Snakes and Ladders. Snakes and Ladders is a fantastic education in risk. And I think risk should be taught to 6 and 7-year-olds, and you're using media like Snakes and Ladders to say there are bad things out there, the snakes, and there are good things out there, the ladders, and actually they can hit you at any time without you expecting you're going to throw another number on the die. So that's very good point.
Picking up on Robert's point, actually, the Extreme Heat Resilience Alliance, Robert, has a fellow, he's here, actually, who created Call of Duty, which is a little game that about 1 billion people play. And he's now creating an extreme heat resilience game from scratch that's being made available out there. So I think that concept of gamification is picking up, Robert, in a very real way. So we were having a fantastic conversation, and we were actually about to connect. We actually had an attempt at stealing IP. I mean, somebody was serious about saying, can I have your IP and use it for myself? You would have been proud because it was your staffer. So, and then we were getting close to connecting the early warning systems and capabilities to the finance world and creating kind of a new concept of anticipatory finance. But then Stewart said, no, don't do that. You should answer the questions. So we have answers to the questions, unlike the other two tables, right? The first was, why would you do something like this, right? And it was really twofold. One was R&D. I mean, basic R&D. I mean, your people get smarter if they're out there with communities and causes and other institutions that are struggling with something where you have a capability to offer. So there's an R&D element of that. There's also, a networking, a relationship building. There's some wonderful marketing and PR, Michael. It really works well. You should talk to your comms people about it. And also it could allow you to actually advance your commercial strategic objectives, right? I mean, there really is it comes back to you sometimes when you don't even know where it's coming from. So the first one is there are multiple reasons, but again, R&D and I'd say kind of soft marketing were two that we talked about. The second one, I think we answered it in a different way than it was asked, but it was really a brilliant kind of counter question, and that is, how is it funded? And I think, you know, that's a good almost entry point into why would you not engage like this, because if it is funded by your marketing department, you're probably not doing it for the right reason. And that'll catch up to you, meaning you'll start to send subpar talent out there. It'll just be about pictures. It'll be about a paragraph in the annual report, which, by the way, I used to write the paragraphs in the annual report about Michael's project, so I know what that's like and what the problems can be there. So there is a bit of cynicism that can be created by these programs if they're not done for the right reason. And then what else is missing? And again, we probably had 25 minutes of good conversation and 5 minutes on these questions. So the last one is kind of a connection point, right? It's almost connecting supply and demand. Demand of what do the institutions need, what kind of talent do they need, what type of capabilities do they need, and then having almost a clearinghouse of sorts where you can access the talent and the capabilities from other institutions. So it's a bit of that connection of understanding, you know, the objectives that are trying to be met and what do they need to get there and who actually is sitting on those and is willing to share them.
One more thing I just thought of, this is new to the table, but we need a different COP. We need a common operating picture is what we need, which is what emergency managers use to look at situational awareness. So what we actually need, and we kind of had this at the table because we had research, policy, commercial companies, startups, technology, stealing ideas, insurers, finance, and NGOs. So that is the COP, that's the common operating picture, but how do we get everyone who's at this table in the real world to work together as well? Not answering any of those three questions.
No, but a lot of great ideas in the room, so that's been great. That felt like a real workshop with new ideas and challenges thrown around. So what I'd like to do is do two things. One is to suggest, again, that we maybe set up a bit of an informal network. So essentially, if you leave me your email address, I'll reach out with a clean write-up of this, and then maybe with the ask of who's volunteering to spend a little bit more time developing some of these ideas further. I think we should take the momentum that we create here at this COP27 and try to salvage some of this as we go back to our daily business. So my simple suggestion would be those who are in, just leave your card here on the podium, and I'm happy to take that away or leave a note or so. And the second thing is, to wrap this up, I'll ask for further final observations from my co-hosts and co-moderators from Barbara and Stewart. And then again, we can go kind of into the unofficial part if you want to stay and continue some of these conversations. I understand from our partnership manager that we're free to do so. Still, yeah, still summed up? Yeah? Excellent. So to continue these conversations. Barbara, Stewart.
Thanks. So listening to the various tables, I mean, I think especially the first table, they started to break down. There was some little algorithm that they were doing based on the questions. And I think what's interesting is that each table did a little bit of a different approach. But there were common themes, and you could start to hear them in terms of the way that this could go forward. I also think that as I heard the conversation, and we were watching the videos before in Nigeria, and thinking of what that would mean for an example that was given at this table, where they're doing flood map awareness and they're attaching it to phones, and it's part of the emergency management. There's also a cross-fertilization. This is very much how we work with our chief resilience officers. And so I think there are other examples. I gave one at the table of where multiple corporates are providing some money, but they're providing they are providing a lot of volunteer time to do this insurance fellowship, and that's where the R&D came in as well. So I feel like, I hope that this group will stay together and do a bit more on this and sort of push it forward, because I for one don't come to COP expecting things to happen tomorrow, but I do hope that they're going to happen, over time as we start to work together. So that's it for me. Barbara.
Thank you. I think for me, I really love the idea of a common operating picture. And I think we really, really need to use the strength of our diversity. We have so many different ideas just in this room, and think about reaching out to different kinds of organizations, different kinds of constituencies. We here have the investment COP, there is over there a very political COP. How do we reach out across these spaces and really have a common operating picture together? Thanks.
So I think that deserves a round of applause to us all. Thank you so much.
If I can, one final thing as an Australian from Perth, I do hope you can make it to COP29, rumoured to be in Australia, and I really want to spread the rumour that it's coming to Perth, and I hope you can all come and see us there.
Thanks for that invitation. Thanks all for your work. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much indeed, and have a good continuation of the COP and the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.
Are you working on the green hydrogen standard? Yeah, nice. Yeah. I actually am here with Everledger, another company that I work with. Yeah. We do critical minerals.
There's one small chance it'll get to